Bishop Will Willimon is one of the bigger personalities in the United Methodist Church. He's, of course, retired now. That has not kept him from talking very publicly and I would say churlishly about developments in Methodism. He thinks all of us who left are just silly and it was an unnecessary division and we've all been just way too self-righteous. He's been very uncharitable in his rendering of who we are and what we're about and why we care about what we do. A big part of his life was spent in this church, Buncombe Street church. I can't tell you a whole lot about them. You'll see just on their website here, this is buncombeStreet.com. They have a thing right here on denomination affiliation. It's because they have left the United Methodist Church and they're about to be taking a vote on joining the Global Methodist Church. They're a huge church, by the way, and apparently getting out of the denomination was really difficult for them. This is an article written in the Baptist News Global by a guy named Curtis Freeman, and we'll start with talking about Willimon's analysis. But yeah, this is Bishop Will Willimon here. And apparently the author of this piece was friends with Will Willimon, and Willimon is going to be publishing a book. So let's start here where it starts talking about him. Consideration of the future of the United Methodist Church is one thing, but when his home church, the Buncombe Street Methodist Church in Greenville, South Carolina, voted to disaffiliate, it caught Willimon off guard. He wondered how the people who nurtured him into faith could lead their connectional church to become free agent Congregationalists. So technically, that's where they are right now. They've left the UMC. They haven't yet affiliated with the GMC. How could they entertain such an unholy thing? Don't they know that it's better to be tied to this corrupt body of the UMC rather than insist on doctrinal purity? In an attempt to work out his confusion and disappointment, Willimon has written an enlightening account under the title Losing a Church, due in June 2025. It is a love story gone tragically wrong. As he puts it, quote, "The church I remembered has been dismembered." The source of dismemberment, as Willimon tells it, was the new minister. The bishop appointed him to the church as a licensed local pastor, not an ordained elder, because he refused to itinerate. That is, he would not agree to serve where the bishop sent him. It was an unusual process, out of step with the tradition at Buncombe Street and Methodist practice, yet what the new pastor lacked in denominational credentials, he more than compensated for in political shrewdness. It did not take long for him to lead the church to disaffiliate. So we've got this highly irregular local licensed pastor leading. He won't itinerate like more normal people would. First off, no one made the bishop appoint this guy here. Secondly, everyone has the right to say on what conditions they will serve. He was not, what would be despicable here is if you're an ordained elder who then refuses to itinerate. This guy had integrity to say, I got family living in the area. I need to stay here. I'm willing to serve, but I can't move. I'm not. And then the bishop could have said, well, then can't have you. Bishop said, okay, please lead this congregation. And then Willimon paints this picture. Oh, they would have stayed. They were happy United Methodists, but he manipulated them. He gave them misinformation. You see this from all these people in denial in the United Methodist Church. Nobody in their sane mind could want to leave us. We're so great with our pastors preaching tarot cards and witchcraft. And I've substantiated this in previous segments. I'd say you have to be crazy to be happy in the United Methodist Church. You have to just be in supreme denial if you're happy in the UMC. But here he paints this caricature of this pastor, which, by the way, this pastor killed himself. And I'm not going to speak about what was going on in this pastor's mind whenever he did this, and I'm not going to at all laud or say it's ever okay to kill yourself. I think this is a massive... I think suicide is a sin, and I'm not ever going to, and I think it's a personal decision. I'm not going to lay that at anybody's feet. But also, I just think it sure is really unfortunate whenever you demonize somebody and they kill themselves. I think that's really crappy. Willimon asked me to listen to some of the pastor's sermons. A few days later, he questioned me, don't you think he's a closet Southern Baptist? To be fair, the new pastor had grown up under the preaching of a Baptist who had a long run as a lay preacher at a small Methodist church in South Carolina. I told him, "It's worse than that." "What do you mean?" he said. "How could it possibly be worse?" I replied, "The Southern Baptists have gone Presbyterian." And that he moves on from there. At the end of the article, he says, "After I wrote this article, I learned the Greenville pastor I mentioned but did not name had taken his own life a week earlier. His family and community deserve prayer and support. However, the facts and causes of the disaffiliation of Buncombe Street Church and others like it remain unchanged." So the larger article is, I think, about that phenomenon. And this is something that I've kind of pushed back on David Watson about. At what point do we get to say, you don't belong here, you actually belong to a different tradition? The specifics of the theology preached by the Buncombe Street pastor, you're more of a Southern Baptist. Methodists for a long time have been known for being able to believe anything and be a Methodist, and that's really quite shameful. I don't know the particulars of what he preached. Maybe he wasn't a perfect Methodist, but what I do know is John Wesley would never have allowed for many of the innovations of the United Methodist Church. So it's just so silly when they talk about, that's not Methodist, that doesn't belong here. Well, you're not Methodist. The United Methodist Church isn't Methodist. You're an illegitimate receiver of that title. The thing that's I connect this to in the Global Methodist Church, my tribe, that I'm concerned about, I don't like when people say, well, this is Methodist doctrine, you have to believe this or else you don't belong in the GMC. David Watson's pushback for this was, we did approve a constitution that has theology in it, has some basic doctrine in it. If you're not on board, yeah, you really need to get out. I'm of the mind that General Conference 2026 is where we're really going to hash out our doctrine. That's where we're going to figure out if every single church in every single part of the world needs to practice infant baptism. That's where we're going to get pretty clear about matters like assurance, once saved, always saved, sanctification, a lot of these things that there's a lot of variety on right now. There's going to be less variety afterwards. And right now is the time we need to be able to talk through that stuff without people saying, you sound like a Southern Baptist. You'd be much happier in the Southern Baptist Convention. Listen, let everybody self-segregate right now. We don't need to be alienating people from the bodies that they've chosen to affiliate with right now. There will be a time for that. I'm all about church discipline. I'm all about helping people figure things out for themselves if they can't figure it out for themselves, figuring it out for them if they can't figure it out for themselves. But for right now, I just think that this is a very ungracious way. The United Methodist Church, when you talk about having a big tent and then you're like, but you don't belong in it, then that's just icky, and that's what I talked about kind of yesterday as well with the purple movement, where they really just want you to be blue. But anyway, with Buncombe Street, they have put out a YouTube video about this vote that they're going to have, and I'm going to let you watch just a little bit of that.
This past summer,
I think that video was in good taste. You have to do things to call, especially when it's a huge church, you have to call people together and then to explain the process and the conclusions you've come to. And I've done previous segments showing concern that so many large churches are getting free and then just staying free and not joining up with another denomination. And I think it speaks well of them that they've taken their time to do this discernment, and now they're looking very seriously at the GMC. They're going to take their vote in another week and a half, I think. And I'm not going to pretend to have insider knowledge, but I'd be very surprised if they got to this point and then did not choose to join. If there are any people from that church who watch this now or later, I think it's a good place to be. That's why I'm a Global Methodist, and I think we could use faithful churches that have gone through a hard time. South Carolina has not been an easy conference to go through. I did an interview with Dan Temple a couple weeks ago from the Blaine Church that has not been allowed to go through a good discernment process. Anyway, I just think it's great that they're coming to this place and that the Lord has brought them to this peaceable place and that they can potentially be a part of a larger covenant body again. It seems pretty clear that they've been maligned from the outside, even by a United Methodist bishop, and that's really quite unfortunate. So I'm glad that they find themselves at a good place now. I reached out to one of their pastors, I think their head pastor, yesterday, and he got back to me saying, well, our communications person doesn't think it's a good idea for me to talk to you right now. Otherwise, I would, and I'd like to talk to you, and maybe we'll talk sometime in the future. I just like telling these churches stories.